Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. My name is Brian Kenna. I'm a marketing officer here in IASA, and I'm here with Stephen Daly. Today, we are discussing DAE Capital's view on long-term sustainability with Alexander Rasnavad, the Chief Strategy Officer. So Stephen's going to kick it off with the first question.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. Once again, thanks, Alexander, for taking the time out of your day to share your insights on the industry with IASA and our students alike. So, first question, DAE Capital has a diverse portfolio of aircraft ranging from narrow-body A320s to 777 freighters. Amidst this period of uncertainty, how does a mixed business model affect sustainability, both for you and your clients?
Sure. Well, firstly, thanks very much, gentlemen, for having me. I think your organization's objectives are very interesting and have a lot of merit. Aviation is an incredible industry, and happy to be here today to speak with you. In terms of our portfolio, DAE Capital, we're really focused on three areas of the market from an asset perspective. One is the narrow body and wide body passenger commercial jet market. Secondly is the wide body dedicated freighter market. And then finally, the turboprop market, where we're specifically focused in one asset type called the ATR 72-600. So from an asset value perspective, about half of our portfolio is in the commercial jet market from a narrow body perspective. About 30% is in the wide body commercial jet market, and the remaining bit is split between our freighter exposure and our ATR 72-600 exposure. The crisis that our industry and the world faces today has shown very interesting kind of risk reward of the diversification we have in our portfolio, specifically as it relates to our freighter exposure. So one of the kind of positive or areas of strength in aviation today is the air cargo market. So our exposure to that side of the business has been a really strong foundation for cash flow and strength overall. So the 777 freighter, which is where the vast majority of our exposure in the freighter market sits from a dollar perspective, has been performing exceptionally well. Then kind of more broader in terms of our other asset type focuses. On the ATR side, which is the turboprop market, and where we lease those aircraft is really to infrastructure restricted areas. So these type of airplanes serve a infrastructure purpose where there's not really that much viable alternative modes of transportation. So while there is definitely stress in that element of our business, the underlying need for these aircraft is driven by infrastructure limitations. So we think long term that recovers nicely. And then looking at the passenger commercial jet side, that's where we've seen a major pullback globally in terms of the industry, just given travel restrictions and the number of passengers that aren't flying. So that side of the business is definitely seeing the most pain in this crisis, but we're confident that long-term, medium-term, as we come through the health crisis, that side of our business will perform well as well.
Perfect. Thanks very much. That was quite an insightful answer.
Yes, very interesting. Furthermore, do you think the leasing industry will see great demand in the future as airlines seek to become more agile in the wake of such economic crisis?
Yeah, so I think the aircraft leasing business, in times of crisis, will essentially come out of this in a stronger position and in a more in-demand position. So when you look at what aircraft leasing companies do for the industry. We're essentially capital providers that provide our airline customers with 100% financing for the aircraft that they require. So when the industry faces a crisis like the one we are in today, which is very much unprecedented, airlines on their own largely are struggling to access financing markets. There's obviously exceptions to that statement. Looking at the U.S. market, many of the U.S. carriers have been successful in raising financing to support their liquidity needs in this difficult time, as well as other large operators globally. But when you kind of take a step back and speak in general terms, airlines around the world will struggle to finance their businesses and to raise liquidity to support their fleet needs. For lessors in today's crisis, equally are struggling to raise financing. The financing markets are very cautious on our sector, on aviation and travel generally. So for lessors, even today, it is difficult to raise financing. But given the nature of our business is very diverse from a geography standpoint, from a credit standpoint, from an asset type standpoint, I think over the longer term, the financing markets view the leasing model as a more diversified business model that shows wherewithal through down and upturns. So I think what all that means is, lessors over time, as we work through this crisis, as we come out of it, we'll have stronger access to capital than our airline customers. And I think our access to capital will be increasingly in demand to airlines that will face more and more challenge to raise the capital they need. So I think, overall, that means the leasing product, the value add will increase through this crisis, not decrease. The one kind of counter to that is, what it takes for aircraft leasing. Key element of our business is leasing to as many airlines around the world as possible. And again, different players in aircraft leasing have different models, but in terms of the large scale leasing companies, we're focused on having a broad base of airline customers that are diverse, so we can manage risk. If out of this crisis we see major consolidation in the airline side, so going from 300-ish commercial airlines globally that reflect viable leasing customers for aircraft leasing for aircraft leasing businesses. If there's major consolidation where you don't have as large a number of airlines globally, that basically means the customer base for lessors will shrink. And how that plays out for leasing businesses will be interesting to see, whether in a kind of increasingly consolidated airline world, whether that's a net positive or negative for the long-term leasing industry.
Yes, thank you very much for that. An interesting insight that we'll just have to, I suppose, wait and see how it plays out.
So DAE Capital has acquired many long-haul aircraft in recent years. During these times of low passenger volumes for what looks like the distant and foreseeable future, how sustainable is long-haul travel financially?
So I think where we sit today in the crisis and look at different recovery scenarios, I think market consensus is kind of forming a view that long-haul travel will be the slowest to recover, which makes sense because, as individual countries or blocks such as the EU get their hands around the health crisis and manage the acceleration in number of COVID cases, once they do that, it's incumbent on the government to make sure that they don't take a step in the wrong direction and allow big movement of people coming from different places in the world that have more risk. So I think naturally that will lead to kind of more restrictions in terms of passenger movements versus domestic markets, which we see as recovering far quicker and more robustly. Having said that, the free movement of people and goods globally is a foundational item for global economic growth and development. So I think longer term, if you believe in economic progress and global trade, the movement of people aren't, even in light of the health crisis we're going through today, over the long term, I think will continue to grow and be very strong and robust. So long term, we remain very optimistic about people's desire to travel, see the world, for businesses to invest in travel budgets so their professionals can travel and develop opportunities and interface with their customers. But in the interim, it is going to be challenging. How we kind of look at our wide body exposures, at the end of the day, a lot of the airlines, underlying customers of these assets are stronger airlines. So, national carriers that serve an important purpose to their home country. So a good example would be Fiji Airways, where we have last year we financed 2 of their new A350-900s. So for Fiji, its economy is vastly tourism related. So to have efficient long haul aircraft is critical to its economy over the long term. They have to bring passengers from the U.S., from Asia Pacific to the island, and those airplanes are fundamental to that. So, I think when we look at our wide body exposure and the airlines that we lease those aircraft to, a lot of them look like Fiji. So these are airlines that require this over the long term. So yeah, I think long term we feel very comfortable that things will cover. In the interim, it is a difficult period. Our customers require support in terms of lease rentals, giving them flexibility so they can manage their own cash flow issues given the decline in passenger demand. So we're doing that, and thankfully DAE Capital has the strength and balance sheet to provide that support to our customers.
Perfect. You just briefly alluded to the question that I'm just about to ask. So revenue for your clients has been disrupted enormously in recent months due to COVID. So what actions has DAE Capital taken to ensure sustainability of aviation in the long term?
Yeah, so the actions that we've taken to allow us to not only survive this very deep and broad crisis, but to thrive in it, were actions taken for many months and years leading up to this crisis. So the reality is, if you didn't come into this crisis in a strong position from a liquidity standpoint, from a strong position in terms of your platform capability standpoint, it's too late. You're not able to raise new money efficiently today to meet your liquidity needs, to scramble and build capability on the technical side to protect your assets, to be able to find new opportunities, and have a global network of airline relationships. It's too late in a crisis to all of a sudden turn on a switch and have that. So for DAE, we've come into this crisis in a very strong position. Over the last several years, we've been very focused on strengthening our balance sheet, focused on getting an investment-grade credit rating, and really raising the liquidity to excel in a period of disruption. So, the actions we've taken to get through this crisis really predate this crisis and is what our organization has been working hard on over the last 3 years. So for those that came into the crisis with limited liquidity, without a deep bench of aircraft leasing professionals to manage assets, this is a very difficult time. It's difficult for the best platforms and the most well-capitalized platforms. So for those that don't have those strengths, this is very difficult period to get through.
Perfect. Thanks for that answer.
So what advice would you give to students hoping to pursue a career in the aviation industry?
So the aviation industry is very broad, and there's a lot of different opportunities and businesses that exist in that. So I sit in an aircraft leasing company, which is in terms of the functions that we have and what we do, it is much different than sitting in an airline, which is much different than sitting in a manufacturing company or in a maintenance company. So the aviation business is very broad. It covers industrial, it covers services, covers finance. So I think firstly, pursuing a career in aviation starts with passion and an interest in the world, because ultimately this is an incredibly global business. I mean, aviation is what allows globalization and trade and movement of people to occur. So I think firstly, starting from a point of curiosity about the world, interest about different places and cultures, that is great foundation, and a lot of people in aviation have those types of passion, interested to see the world, interested to explore new cultures, interested to do business in different places. So the passion about the world itself, I think, brings a lot of energy to a young professional looking to come into the aviation business. In terms of like more hard and specific skill sets, and I'll speak from an aircraft leasing perspective, having a very strong foundation in finance and accounting. Ultimately, aircraft leasing companies are investors that dedicate their capital deployment to aircraft. So, knowing the fundamentals of corporate finance, of accounting, is a very key element to being successful in aircraft leasing. Other kind of skills would be the language side. I mean, ultimately, sitting in an aircraft leasing company, for a DAE as an example, we have customers in nearly 60 countries around the world. And so if you're an individual that, would like to kind of originate and do business development, having language skills to cover specific areas of the market is a huge advantage. On the kind of legal side and contractual elements of our business, which is a big part of it. So we own airplanes, and you have to agree the terms in which they're leased, agree the terms in which you finance them, in which you sell them. Having good foundational skills in writing and understanding basic legal framework is also important. But at the end of the day, to be successful in this business, you have to have a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and be willing to work hard. There's a lot of challenges in this business that are outside of your control, global events, and you have to kind of connect all those dots and be aware of global trends, global issues to help inform the kind of day-to-day business. So those are pretty broad directional points, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, thank you very much, Alexander, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and speak to us and our audience today. So on behalf of us, everyone at IASA, just a big thank you.
Thank you very much, and best of luck to everyone.